Welcome to 8 Nights of Kvetching. Night 1.
Hello, and welcome to the Dead Dreams Club, 8 Nights of Kvetching. I am Jessica, and I am joined by fellow Dead Dreams Club member and Jew Meredith. And we are going to spend the next 8 nights engaging in one of our favorite traditions of the kind of Jewish holidays, which is the kvetch. And if this is new to you, it is complaining, airing our grievances, talking about the things that make us feel a little spicy, a little angry, and just otherwise feeling all of the feels. So tonight, for night 1, we're going to be talking about pay equity and rethinking things like salary surveys. So Meredith, what is a salary survey?
What is the salary survey? Well, the salary survey that we are specifically talking about is the AAMD salary survey, which is, I believe, the American Association of Museum Directors, or is it the Association of Art Museum Directors? It's one of the two.
Association of Art Museum Directors.
There we go. And I'm posting my flub on YouTube. So the salary survey is a survey that is sent out to all participating museums to get a baseline understanding of what they are paying all of their staff. And it's sort of divided by broad geographic region within the United States only. And they post median, low, high, and they also have, I think they post percentiles as well. And they try to get a spread of museum jobs. However, I will say that not all jobs are represented on the salary survey. It's especially hard for small museums who, like, people maybe hold multiple roles. So which one do you pick?
And I think when we're talking about this, why does the salary survey even exist is, a complicated question, because I think the response that we can give that is very kind of maybe politically motivated a little bit is that these kinds of surveys exist to help institutions benchmark. So when you're trying to plan for a new job, if you want something that has an air of transparency to it, something like this salary survey, in theory, helps expose what the worth of these positions should be, what you should be planning to pay these positions. They're really done, I think, with the expressed hope of transparency. But I think the problem and the kvetch, as we get to it, is that they really start to become a way for people to hold up bad practices. So when institutions want to defend the low salaries that kind of permeate our field, these surveys tend to come into play. And I think that's one of the major kvetches that Meredith and I have with each other quite often about these surveys, is that they're used to uphold unfair pay, salaries, equity, any which way you want to look at that. And one of the major problems that I'll let Meredith kind of jump into is that it's really difficult when you're looking at things like pay by region. And Meredith, I'm gonna throw it to you for that one.
Yeah. Like, speaking from experience, they subdivide, like I said, they subdivide the country roughly into like northeast, or south, Midwest, right? And but there tends to also, as a lot of people who maybe live in cities know, is that you have a high cost of living hub in an otherwise low cost of living state or low cost of living geographic region. And so what that necessarily means is that if your geographic region falls into one of those lower cost hubs or lower salary hubs, then your institution is not in any way beholden to pay you equitably for your region. They could just say, like, yeah, but like everybody else in the state only makes blah blah blah, but you're like, hey, my rent's triple that. And you know, any like this is capitalism, people can pay you whatever the fuck they want to pay you. But like when you have that sort of benchmarking capabilities, you have it gives museums basically a leg to stand on in terms of underpaying their employees for what they're worth. Um,
Also a really good tool
yeah.
for gaslighting. Make
Mhm.
your employees believe that's all they are due
Mhm.
or worth. And I
Yeah.
think that's, you know, a major part of my kvetch of this is that it really does make you feel like you can't defend why you should be paid more, even though we have so many other examples. And something I want Meredith you to dive into more is the fact that this gets even more difficult if you're at one of these institutions that is hybrid. So if you are working at a research institute or a nonprofit or a place that is these like library, museum, archive hybrids, or in the academic space, and now you're not even necessarily getting paid within the ranges that your colleagues in a different part of the institution would be paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like amazingly, believe it or not, libraries pay more than museums, which like I feel like there's a record scratch for every librarian who may watch this. But librarians make more at libraries and especially research libraries than they do here. And I am saying that from experience comparing to entry level, like entry to mid entry level jobs where you know the museums are sometimes paying about half for the same sort of basic asks and skill sets. Um, but yeah, when you are at an institution that isn't necessarily a museum, but that might hold a museum or museum-like entity, um, they, you know, what's going to drive them is it going to be internal equity? So, like, are your museum staff going to be paid the same as maybe an entry-level staff in a completely other department that has nothing to do with museums, such as accounting, such as HR, such as like broadly development? Um, or are you going to pay them specifically for what the field demands? And therefore, you're going to say, yeah, well, I know that entry level in accounting pays whatever. I don't know. I don't work in accounting, but like, you know, if you're like entry level accountants make this, so I'm going to give them that. But entry level museums pays 25,000. So I only have to pay them that. And then you fucked up your internal equity, but you've honored the standards by which the AAMD salary survey has set out to do. So, you know, that's sort of the other issue is that a lot of times when there's compensation setting in a museum that belongs to a larger governing institution, they don't know enough about the specific industry. So they're going to use the tools that are available to them because they don't know, and that's what's available to them. So then you really, really sometimes struggle to appropriately compensate.
And I think one thing I would add to this idea of like equity in museums is not equitable in society is also the way I cannot stand hearing folks. And for those of you new to Dead Dreams Club, Meredith and I are both kind of on the technology side of museums. And so I'm sure Meredith has heard this as well, but I've heard a lot of complaining from HR, management, leadership, whatever else you want to say, when we have positions open in the technology side of museum. We get constant complaints that they can't find anybody to take these jobs. And it's because one, our hiring takes so long, which is another night of kvetching. But second, we're not paying equitable for what this skill set is. So when you're trying to hire a front end developer or a back end developer or someone who has this project management skill set and you want to pay them $50,000-$60,000 a year for a job that they could easily do anywhere else for probably 80,000 a year, and then they wonder why they won't take the job. It's like you just sit there and you're like, because like you're not paying what it should be worth. And then you get into that bigger, broader reality check of, you know, this is what the skill set pays. And you can't keep relying on this idea that because we chose to work in nonprofits, because we chose to work in museums or libraries, that we signed up to be underpaid. We signed up to just, you know, do it. We didn't do it for the money. And it's like, well, I did though, because I still have to pay for everything. Like the US government is not like, oh, you work in a nonprofit, we won't take taxes from you. Like we'll cover your rent. Like I still have to pay for these things. So like, yes, we do it for the money on top of other things. But in true Dead Dreams Club fashion, it would not be a part of Dead Dreams Club if we didn't try and dive into solutions to our kvetching, which I think anyone who has been a part of a Jewish celebration and a true kvetch knows we love to throw solutions at each other's problems. So let's dive into Meredith. What do we think we could be doing better?
I mean, this is going to be my very flippant answer, but throw the whole fucking thing out. Like, abolish the system. But actually, you know, then you get people going, well, then what are you going to do? And I'm like, okay. You know, I do think that we're never going to be able to close that gap between for-profit completely. I don't. And I get it. And I recognize that. So I think one of the first things is to think about the workplace environment as a whole and say, okay, if I can't pay everybody exactly what they're worth, think about the wage gaps between entry, middle, upper, and executive level staff. When you have staff who are making, you know, over $1 million a year, and then you have staff who are making, you know, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, why? And who's working, and sort of reevaluate where you're allocating your funds, reevaluate where you're doing that, and maybe think about who's in leadership and can demonstrate that, like, nobody needs $1 million a year, but you know, the people who are at the lowest sort of part of the pecking order in your museums are probably the people who are going to be paying off all the loans on all the degrees that you make them have. Help them out a little bit. So I would say the first thing is like rethink your wage gaps and try to close those. I also think you should rethink the working environment as a whole. What is attracting people to your work in the first place? And if, you know, they're like, yeah, I could be making 120,000, but I'm choosing to make 60, make it worth the while. Make it worth their while to show up every day, knowing that they are going to get paid less, but maybe they feel seen. Maybe they feel taken care of. Maybe your leave is good. Maybe your insurance is good. Maybe you've cultivated a really wonderful, healthy, supportive, and inclusive environment. So think about your working environment as well.
Yes. And I would love to plus that point of saying, I think one reason, especially being kind of on the technology side, one thing I really try to bring with my team in particular is that idea of like, we chose to work in museums because really there's never going to be a museum emergency in very rare cases. So when we're looking at the differences between, you know, some of like my spouse works in the for-profit sector as a web developer, and there are times we have been on vacations, on holidays, other things, and he gets that call and he has to drop everything and log in because that is the expectation. And so I think that is something museums, that is something nonprofits can really cultivate, is that work-life balance of you might be making half as much money, but when you are not here, you are not here. Like we do not expect you to be around. And like, let's do better at that instead of having people check their emails or be available on Slack or send out these like very American messages of like, I'll be away, but you can reach me in these 10 places. Like, let's let people be gone and really kind of respect that point of it as well. But yes, 100% the wage gap, looking at these kinds of things, I think are really the best solutions we can kind of propose right now. As well as like, just be realistic about your benefits. Like nobody really needs another ice cream social or like, you know, free donuts on Mondays. Like just give us $15 more a month or something, you know, like just be conscientious of what your money is going towards, or be transparent about it. Like if you don't have the money to pay people more, but a local business donated donuts every Monday, cool. But then tell us why you're getting those things. Like just the transparency of it, I think can help. And in general.
But then also think about the projects that you're taking on as well, because a lot of the time, you know, people fundraise for these like massive projects, but they don't fundraise for like the adequate salary to support the projects. Then you're sitting there and you're going like, hey, so we're just going to hypothetically like involve, you know, a laser light show and a helicopter for what? You know, why?
Or even from my experience, you get the funding for the $500,000 camera setup and software to do digitization, but nobody thought of hiring the person to come in and operate that system. And then nobody on your staff has the time or like the ability to take that on. So like just when you're planning projects, when you're looking at these things, these kinds of planning to pay the people doing the work shouldn't be a revelation in 2022, but it still feels like it needs to be said.
Yeah. So in summation, night one, salary surveys, to borrow a phrase that our fellow Dead Dreams Club member Allison Kennedy, I believe, quoted from their mentor, Ben Garcia, salary surveys are toxic benchmarking. So don't engage in that. Think instead about your area. Think about competing offers from other institutions and pay appropriately. Think of, if you cannot pay appropriately, think about the wage gaps in your institution. Think about the funds allocated to the projects and think about fundraising and endowments. And if you can't, don't. If you can't take on that project without paying people appropriately, don't.
And one thing I think we forgot to hit on here, but that will be coming up in other 8 nights as well, is talk to each other as part of our staffs. If you feel comfortable, if you have those work friends or colleagues that you feel comfortable trying to talk to about it, one of the only ways to learn about the wage gap in your institution is to talk to each other about it. We can look up, you know, the top 10 earners or so on the tax return for your institution. And that's how I always knew who was making close to $500,000 or making, you know, that kind of benchmark. But knowing who throughout different departments or even your own department, what everybody was kind of making, to be able to have some kind of ability to band together, talk about it. It is fully within your legal rights to talk about it, and no one can tell you can't. But I think one of the things we will probably continue to push for during these 8 nights is empowering you to speak with each other and really forging those relationships when you feel comfortable. Now, again, if somebody doesn't want to talk about it, leave them alone. But these are the things we are hoping will help a little bit. But again, it will never stop us from a good kveCH.